drugs, car crash cases, injuries, and abuse. Across the state of Alabama, the attorneys of Hollis, Wright & Couch are here to serve you. With civil trial lawyer Josh Wright from the firm of Hollis, Wright & Couch and Alabama's 13 host David Lamb, the attorneys answer your tough legal questions straight ahead.
Hello and welcome into the attorneys. The Affordable Care Act, what you need to know. It's in the news quite a bit. Some of the questions that you may have are going to be answered this evening. If you do have questions, we'd love to hear from you, and I'll be sure and pass those along, as many as I can get to our panel of experts. Ways for you to get in touch with us. That information is available throughout the program on your screen. You can call, text, email, and again, I'll pass along as many of those as I can to our panel of experts, led tonight by Greg Foster of the firm of Hollis, Wright & Couch. Greg, good to see you.
Well, David, you too. Thanks for having me.
And this is a subject matter that it's in the news quite a bit, but we have plenty of ground to cover in terms of misunderstandings and maybe misconceptions, don't we?
Well, absolutely. I mean, the Act, it's something that was passed in 2010, but since that time there's been some litigation, and it's actually went all the way to the Supreme Court. And so it's something that will be affecting people in the near term if it hasn't affected them already, and something interesting to talk about.
And we got somebody good to lead us through that discussion.
Absolutely. We've got a great attorney from Tuscaloosa, Matt Glover. And before I even introduce Matt, I want to say hello to his wife, Holly, and sons, Chase and Cole, who are watching, and want to let them know that we appreciate the time that they've given to allow Matt to come and be here today. But Matt's a great attorney from Tuscaloosa that does industrial accident cases. He does them in the state of Alabama, actually does cases outside the state too. So, we're lucky to have a national attorney here today in Matt Glover.
Well, Matt, good to see you.
Thanks for saying that. Appreciate it.
Let's start with an overview of the Affordable Care Act. What is it?
David, I think that's been one of the greatest failures in terms of how it's been defined. One of the things that Greg and I have to do as trial lawyers is we have to define the issue.
Right.
No one knows this, unfortunately, as the Affordable Care Act. Right. People refer to it as Obamacare. Yeah. And unfortunately, I think we've got a great president, but the term in and of itself's got a pretty negative connotation. When people talk about Obamacare, usually they're not very in favor of it.
Right.
What the Affordable Care Act is, though, is there's about 30+ million people who will have health insurance as a result of it who don't have health insurance now.
Okay.
And the problem, David, that has created for the public is, one, insurance premiums have been going up astronomically over the last few years. People have been dropped. They suddenly get a serious illness and the insurance company drops them. And then there's a big section of the public who just simply can't get health insurance. Right. So the purpose of the Affordable Care Act was to curb cost, keep insurance companies from dropping you, and opening the gates to people who need insurance who can't currently afford insurance. Okay. So that was the purpose, but unfortunately it wasn't defined properly, and so many people have a misconception about what the law is.
And Greg, kind of a point of the purpose for tonight's program is to clear up some of those misconceptions.
Absolutely, and I think Matt did an excellent job, just in the title and just as far as why the Act's there, why it was brought about, and what kind of ills it's trying to cure. So you definitely have misconceptions in that department. And also we're going to try to cover the whole, we've got the Supreme Court that's gotten involved in the Affordable Care Act, and we're going to hopefully cover that as well, and kind of the litigation process, so that people understand that when there's an issue, going to court is a good remedy, is a good alternative as far as trying to get something resolved. And so here in this particular instance, some people had some problems with the Act. They didn't run down the streets and throw rocks in windows. Right. They went through the court system.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Let's talk about some of the provisions of the Act. Explain some of those provisions to us.
Well, I think one of the most important provisions, David, is, for instance, let's say you've got cancer. Okay? You've got cancer and you lose your insurance. Okay. And then you get another job because you lost your job in your old form of insurance, and now you get on your employer's new plan. Well, currently, many insurance companies could say, look, we'll cover you, but because you've had cancer, we're not going to cover the cancer now. Well, I mean, cancer treatment is very expensive. Well, one of the key provisions here is that you can't be dropped, or an insurance company cannot exclude you because of a pre-existing condition. Another important provision is that there is no longer a lifetime or an annual cap. Many insurance companies could offer you treatment. I'll give that cancer example again because so many people have cancer. It's like, look, we'll give you cancer treatment, but you may only get $50,000 in coverage in your lifetime. Well, some people would blow through that in 2 or 3 years, and unfortunately they would be dealing with cancer for another 5 or 6. So under the current provision, you can no longer be capped in terms of the amount of coverage that the insurance company will provide for treatment, either on an annual basis or on a lifetime basis.
Okay. We love your questions. Welcome those as well. That information on your screen throughout the program. One of the questions we got, as is today, as we sit here, a viewer wants to know, what effect does the act mean to me as it is now? What effect is it on us, basically?
Well, if you currently don't have health insurance, chances are you're going to get it. And it's going to come of one of many ways. First off, people who are currently on Medicaid, they have a health insurance option. Well, under this Affordable Care Act, the number of people who qualify under the Medicaid provisions will be increased by nearly 1/3. Okay. And the federal government is going to foot the bill for that, meaning the state will not have to. So although Medicaid is typically a state program, the federal system will actually pay for that. If you have insurance now, nothing's going to happen except, chances are, David, the cost of your annual premium will not increase as drastically as it has in the past. And let me explain why that is the case. Currently, so many people out there who have insurance are sick. A lot of young people who are healthy say, look, I don't need health insurance. Yeah. And so they don't get it. And so the pool out there for the insurance companies is filled with people who are sick. If you bring more healthy people in who are contributing on premiums, the health company does not have to increase the premiums in order to get a profit. So it manages cost. Also, what's become so expensive is that a lot of people don't get treatment until it becomes an emergency. The condition has become so bad, they go to the ER. Well, somebody's got to foot the bill for that. Right. When everyone has health insurance, it allows you to get more preventative care so that your condition doesn't get so bad that it requires the drastic costs that are associated with emergencies.
And David, I want to add 2 things to that. Matt's bringing up an important point about the emergency rooms. If anybody wants to know an impact of this law and then the Supreme Court, weighing in on this particular issue, go to your local emergency room. The reason those are typically so packed and there's waiting lines, I know hospitals now even offer, text to get the waiting line time. Why is that? It's because what Matt's talking about, preventative care. People can't afford to have preventative care, so they keep rocking and rolling, and then once the issue gets larger and then they have to deal with it, then they go to the emergency room. What the Affordable Care Act's trying to do is to allow people to have coverage so that they can get the preventative care. And it's going to be a benefit to the larger public because when you go to the ER and really have an emergency, the line should be less long.
Right.
That's right.
All right. Time for our first break. As we head into break, I want to remind you that we love to hear from you. You can do that several different ways. You can call, text, email, that information on your screen. You can also find the firm Hollis, Wright & Couch on both Facebook and Twitter. If you're on Facebook, just search the term Hollis, Wright & Couch. And if you're on Twitter, just Hollis_Wright. Look for that handle and you will find him there. Stay tuned. More of the attorneys coming right up.
I'm Josh Wright with the law firm of Hollis, Wright & Couch, and thanks for watching The Attorneys on Alabama's 13. Now, we hope you, a friend, or a loved one never need legal counsel for a case. But if you do, the goal of the show is simple. Provide answers and legal counsel when you need it the most. Your call to the show is free, so if you have questions specific to this show or related to other civil legal matters, call, email, or text us to talk with one of our lawyers. You can also follow us on Facebook or Twitter to learn about important legal news that could affect you or your family. Or simply contact us by going to alabamas13.com and click on the Attorneys link. We know your time is valuable, so thank you for spending it with us and for watching The Attorneys right here on Alabama's 13.
it does have many names. The Affordable Care Act is the official name. You may have heard it as Obamacare or health care reform, all of the different names for it. But we are going to discuss that and trying to clear up many of the misconceptions and handle your questions as well. Throughout the program, we'd love to hear from you. You can call, text, or email those questions to us. As we continue our conversation here about what is the official title, I guess, is the Affordable Care Act. But in terms of a history lesson here, as quickly as possible, does it go back much further than the Clinton administration? Because it sounds like, just by history, they tried to do something similar as well.
They did. It actually goes back over 100 years.
Oh, it's been a battle we've had for a while.
I think a lot of people, presidents and Congress, have always recognized that health care cost, it's a real issue for our economy and our country as a whole. President Bill Clinton tried to deal with it. President Jimmy Carter tried to deal with it. President Truman tried to deal with it. Wow. President Teddy Roosevelt. And since, a lot of people have tried to deal with the issue. President Obama was successful in accomplishing a lot of things that many of the other presidents and various members of Congress have not been able to create. But it's always been an issue. It was a huge compromise. This wasn't just a situation, David, where a president, as a dictator, said, here's what it's going to be.
Right.
This passed both houses of our Congress, the Senate and the House. It also has been approved by the U.S. Supreme Court, which I know we're going to talk about, and it was signed by the president. So all three branches of government played an important role in the creation of the Affordable Care Act.
Okay. Why is health care reform a legal issue?
Well, I think one of the issues, first of all, it came through Congress. And I think that's one thing that people need to understand is that when you have an act and it comes through Congress or your state legislature, that's the law, okay? So automatically you're creating law. And when you create law, then if somebody wants to challenge that law, then one avenue that they can challenge it in public opinion, which Matt brought up. People try to change the name of the act and try to destroy it by saying it's bad in these particular ways. Another way is you go through the court system, and that's what a group of litigants or plaintiffs did with the Affordable Care Act. They filed suit down in Pensacola. It matriculated up through to Atlanta, the 11th Circuit Court of Appeals, and then it made its way to the Supreme Court. So as far as it being a legal action, it starts as a law. It goes back to your days with the Schoolhouse Rock. You know, I'm just a bill on Capitol Hill. Right. Well, eventually it becomes a law, potentially. In this case, it did. And then you have the opportunity to challenge it through the court system.
When was the constitutionality of the act challenged? When did that challenge take place? Is that what took place in Pensacola?
Well, that's where it started. It started in the district court down in Pensacola, the federal district court. And you had the plaintiffs started there, and then depending on the court rulings, different people challenged different things, filed motions, and then it was appealed up to the 11th Circuit and then went to the Supreme Court. Okay.
And how did the Supreme Court, well, that's how they got involved, but what did the Supreme Court rule?
It was a surprise. I think a lot of the people who predicted what would happen thought that there would be that it would be ruled unconstitutional.
Okay.
But what happened was you have 9 Supreme Court justices, and it was a 5-4 decision. But the person who wrote the opinion, David, was actually a George Bush appointed justice, the Chief Justice, Justice Roberts. Okay. And what the court did is they looked at 2 major constitutional provisions. One, whether it was constitutional under what's called the Commerce Clause, and 2, could the legislature do this as a tax? Could it be legal because it's a tax? And Justice Roberts wrote the opinion and found that in fact it was constitutional.
Would it be naive to think that the issue is settled and it will not find its way before the Supreme Court or continue to be debated?
I think it's settled in terms of whether it's constitutional.
Right.
Now, we all know from watching presidential politics that Mitt Romney has said that he will recall this as soon as he becomes president, if so elected. But even still then, there would be a challenge by Congress. I think it's here to stay. Right. I think there'll always be improvements. Like anything, something can be improved. But I think this is a huge step in the right direction, and I don't think it will be recalled.
Okay. Why is it important, or is it important, that states voluntarily participate?
That was one of the most surprises in the decision, and I think that over time people will become more and more realize how important it was. In the past, for instance, the federal government has given the states money for highways, but there's always been a condition, and that is you have to have a law that people must wear their seatbelts. What the court did was it said, look, the federal government can give you money for the Medicaid program and to foot the bill for this Affordable Care Act. However, if a state says we don't want to participate, like Alabama has indicated that it probably will say we don't want to participate, then the federal government cannot say, well, fine, we'll take the rest of your Medicaid money away. So it becomes completely voluntary, but the question then becomes, why would Alabama not want to participate? I mean, if the federal government is going to pay the cost of increasing more people into the health care pool, why would Alabama say we don't want to be part of that? But some of the leaders have indicated that they're willing to do that.
If that takes place and Alabama does not participate, then even those who may think it's the greatest thing in the world as residents of the state of Alabama will not be able to participate?
There will still be options. People will be able to buy into the pool. There's going to be a pooling system where, for instance, employers who have at least 50 employees will have to make sure their employees have health care. And employees will have an option through what's called a pool. You know, currently we have a lot of insurance companies in Alabama, but there's one who primarily insures the state. Yeah. One of the changes that you're going to see is you're going to see more insurance companies coming in and offering services to the public. The people who will be left out are those who would be able to get insurance under the Medicaid program. That extra 1/3 of people who are currently not covered will not have an option. Why the state would want to do that to them, I don't know, but indications are so far that they're willing to go down that road.
From a time standpoint, I mean, what sort of time frame are we looking at in terms of seeing these decisions being made and the actual effect on residents here in the state?
Well, I think you've already, as far as the act itself, you've already seen certain parts of it. For example, the drug part of the Affordable Care Act has already been put into place, and you're going to see over time, you're going to see other parts of it be put into place in a gradual basis. For example, the whole mandate that has been talked about, as far as the mandate that you have to have insurance. That is going to be a gradual, you know, they've defined it as a tax. It's going to be gradual over 2014, then it's going to raise up in 2016. So that will be a gradual implementation. As far as, you know, the coverage timing of that particular part of it. Something Matt had brought up that's very important as far as the Medicaid. The Affordable Care Act was basically, Congress got involved and they were trying to solve this problem where people did not have insurance. As Matt said, you know, 30+ million didn't have it. So they put this plan into place, and here it is, it's comprehensive. What the Supreme Court has done is, by making the Medicaid portion non-mandatory, which the Act said it's mandatory, the Supreme Court says, no, that's non-mandatory, it's voluntary, you get to decide whether or not you take it. By Alabama not being, if they say, hey, we don't want it, we don't want to get involved, what you've done is you've taken out a chunk of the Affordable Care Act. And really what you've taken out is really the most critical and most important part of that is these people that do not have coverage right now. So by Alabama not participating, you're basically saying, listen, we don't want to help those folks.
And David, one of the things that bothers me is there's so many people who say, look, the reason people don't have health care is because they will not work. You know, there are so many people out there who work 40, 50 hours a week and don't have health care, and they can't afford health care. And so for a government to come in and say, we're not going to try to cover those people, we're just going to leave them out there and they can go work hard and get that health insurance themselves, really shows a lack of understanding of appreciation that there are so many people out there who are working who can't get health care.
On that note, we need to take our second break. After the break, we'll come back for our final segment of The Attorney. So if you want to get a question in, do so now. Call, text, email, that information there. Also find the firm of Hollis, Wright & Couch. Just search Hollis, Wright & Couch. You'll find them on Facebook. Hollis_Wright is your way to find them on Twitter. Stay tuned. The final segment of The Attorney is coming right back.
From all of us at the law firm of Hollis, Wright & Couch, we're glad to have you here with us every Sunday night on Alabama's 13. This week, we're discussing the Affordable Care Act, which was recently addressed by the U.S. Supreme Court. We'll also talk about how it may affect you, as well as the potential legal ramifications the Supreme Court's ruling had. The first thing you need to know is that insurers cannot drop your coverage if you become ill. If you suspect that you have been denied or delayed insurance benefits that you're entitled to, you may want to consult with an attorney. Second, the Affordable Care Act, passed by Congress and signed into law by the President, was challenged recently. Although it was mostly upheld by the U.S. Supreme Court, some significant ramifications surfaced as a result of the court's decision. For example, very soon all Americans will have to be covered by some form of health insurance, either private or Medicaid. Please remember your call, email, or text to the attorneys is free. All of us at Hollis, Wright & Couch want to help answer your questions on real issues you face. Remember, a competent lawyer will respond to every question you send in. That's our pledge and promise to you. Thanks again for watching The Attorneys here on Alabama's 13.
It all comes down to the dollars and what it costs me. We'll get to that in just a moment quickly. Our final segment here, but a few minutes left for you to get in touch with us. Be sure you can call, text, email us, and we'll do our best to pass your question along to our panel of experts. The graphic there talking about some of the cost matters. That is kind of the bottom line for folks. How does it affect their pocketbook?
David, money, money, money. That's what people want to know is, what is it going to cost them? And that's a great question and a thing we want to talk about. And this is going to be graduated. We talked a little bit about that earlier. It's going to be put in place over time because at the end of the day, what we're talking about is this, it's the individual mandate. All right, what is the mandate? Mandate is got to have insurance. Well, what does that mean to me? It's kind of like what Matt talked about earlier. If you already have insurance, you already have insurance. You're already in the game, okay? Right. It's for the people that's been on the sidelines. Those folks that don't have insurance, we're trying to bring them into the game. Like Matt said, we got a problem with Medicaid with some of those folks that may not be able to be brought in the game because Alabama may not participate in Medicaid. Those folks, as far as a tax being affected to them, it may not come into play because there's certain exemptions, okay? The tax is going to be like by 2016, the minimum is going to be $695. Okay. So getting down to the bottom of bottom lines, by 2016, and this thing's basically fully implemented, $695 is the floor. So that means if you're uninsured, don't have an exemption, not on, then you're going to pay $695 as a bottom. But it's 2.5% of your income. So if your income's a certain level, then it's going to be higher than $695, but it's capped at around $2,085. So there's a range there of what that will cost somebody who's uninsured. But like I said, there's exemptions. I mean, it's a tax, so it's like the tax code, and there's always an exemption. And so if you don't file a tax return, then you're not going to be taxed. And there's other exemptions that may affect somebody as well. Okay. All right. One of the questions we've got, I own a business less than 50 employees. Will I be able to participate? I'll let Matt handle that one.
Yeah, absolutely you can participate. But there's a lot of companies out there that have less than 50 employees that are already offering their employees health insurance. For instance, the firm that I work with in Tuscaloosa, we don't have 50 employees, but every employee at our firm is offered health care. And so yes, it's not going to hurt you. What it will allow is that, as I mentioned earlier, there's more insurance companies that will come into the state of Alabama and will offer coverage. And so competition drives prices down, not up. The coverage for businesses that have less than 50 people will actually go up because they won't be able to decline for pre-existing conditions or cap your coverage on a yearly or annual basis. So a lot of small businesses are actually going to see an improvement in the type of health care that they'll be able to offer their employees. And I want to bring a point in on that, David. This is not socialized medicine. So we get back to the misconceptions that Matt brought up at the very beginning. That's one you hear quite a bit. Yeah. It's nowhere close. I mean, we're talking about insurance coverage. And again, like we discussed, if you're already insured, you have your coverage. And as Matt has alluded to, basically by putting more people into the pool, it should bring costs down. So the cost, for example, I say $695 is the floor, up to $2,085 as far as the tax that you will incur if you're uninsured. People that are insured, as far as monthly payments they may, if they're working with a company and the company's not providing the total cost of the insurance, they are probably paying more than that. So as far as somebody being taxed for not having insurance, it's going to be less than what somebody would be paying to incur the cost of insurance. Right. But also there may be an exemption for those people if their income's lower than 8% of the cost for insurance. For example, if the cost in the marketplace is around 8% or less,
then they'll have an opportunity to be exempted as well.
A whole lot of ground to cover. Just don't have the time to get into all of it, but about a minute and a half remaining. Final thoughts from you guys on this subject?
You know, I think it comes down to personal responsibility and corporate responsibility. All three of us drove our cars here this morning, I guarantee it. And the law requires that if we're going to get behind a car, we've got to have insurance. Well, the same thing applies. You know, if you're going to live, you need to have health insurance. And a lot of people's choice not to have health insurance actually causes problems for other people. Their insurance goes up because I don't have it. I show up at the ER.
Right.
You're now stuck with my bill. This is a way where everyone shares. This is a huge problem that we've had as a country, and I think the President and the Congress have taken the right step.
All right.
I agree with Matt. I mean, this is a way to get at some of the ills as far as people being uninsured, and by doing that, you also help those who are insured by helping bring costs down.
Okay. All right. On that note, how about that? We've heard a great deal of debate on this. A good conversation, gentlemen. Appreciate you both being with us. Thanks so much for that. Want to let you know that you can always contact the attorneys. The information you can call, text, email them. If you leave a message, they will get back to you. That is their promise. You can leave a message there. Also, email them. The email address is right there. Find them on Facebook. Search Hollis, Wright & Couch. And you'll also find them on Twitter. Search Hollis_Wright. That's the way you'll find them. We appreciate you being with us. We'll see you next time right here on The Attorney.